Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Voice of Authority webinar brought to you today by Wilmot Dixon. My name is Toby Fox, and I'm the Managing Director of 3Fox, the marketing agency for councils. And our job is to keep our network of councils and developers and investors and their influencers and advisors connected. And since the pandemic began and now beyond, we've been working through this online channel, the Voice of Authority. It's a platform for councils to discuss their ambitions and challenges and influences and issues of urgency. And today, our focus returns to Hertfordshire, specifically to the Hertfordshire Growth Board, which was founded in 2018 and was the focus of a series of Voice of Authority webinars a year ago. You can watch those previous episodes at the voiceofauthority.co.uk or on the 3Fox channel on YouTube. Now, our objective in this second series is to update you on the progress made by the Growth Board over the last year in delivering its programme. And what a programme. In the next 15 years, Hertfordshire is planning for more than 100,000 new jobs and more than 100,000 new homes to meet local needs. And as a result, there's going to be increased demand on schools, on health, on social care, and the already congested road and rail network. And Hertfordshire's place leaders are working together through the Growth Board to achieve sustainable growth, both in terms of leading the county's town centres through recovery from COVID-19 and in terms of laying the infrastructure foundations for new ways of living and working. Notably, a passenger transport system that puts people first. And on that, we're going to start this session with a quick peek at that system, and we're going to be back again after this short video.
The future looks bright for Hertfordshire and Essex. We are looking to improve the future of our east-west travel and wider connectivity. In the next 15 years, we are planning for more than 100,000 new jobs and more than 100,000 new homes to meet our needs. But we are already experiencing increasing demands on our transport network, which is putting a strain on our infrastructure, our health, and the environment. How can we make sure this growth is sustainable and inclusive for all? Let's look at a typical day in 2035. With our lives changing at a rapid pace, our transport network needs to transform too. To embrace these changes, the Hert will provide a fast, frequent and affordable experience for passengers, making it easier to travel across Hertfordshire and into West Essex. Designed with the user in mind, it will transform how people will travel door to door. The system will be convenient and comfortable, linking people to places they live, work and visit, both rural and urban, providing an attractive alternative to the car and helping achieve the government's net zero target. Onboard digital technology will keep users connected while they travel in comfort, enabling multitasking and productive journeys. The Hert will connect with town centres, rail and bus stations along the route, linking with improved bus services and cycling and walking routes, which we are already investing in. We're supporting healthier, more environmentally friendly lifestyles, helping to connect communities to build cleaner, greener, healthier places for people, creating a bright future for our town centres and the businesses investing in our area. The Hert will create a new east-west travel spine, with better connected transport interchanges for journeys in and around Hertfordshire and Essex, providing access to jobs and opportunities for our existing and future residents, enabling our world-class businesses to reach a wider customer base, supporting our strong and resilient economy by building back better and delivering levelling up to improve opportunity for all, allowing us to boost productivity and ensure sustainable economic growth. We have a number of steps to go through in the development and delivery of this innovative project. With the support of residents, businesses and other organisations, we can realise our sustainable growth and transport vision. We need your help to build a transport system that works for everyone. To get involved, please visit www.hertfordshire.gov.uk www.hertfordshire.org.uk/heart.
Well, that's a taste of things to come in Hertfordshire. And to discuss infrastructure and other aspects of getting Hertfordshire investment ready, it's a pleasure to welcome to the Voice of Authority in alphabetical order, Charles Amies, who is Assistant Director of Markets, Partners and Places at Homes England. We also have Councillor Phil Bibby, Executive Member for Highways and Transport at Hertfordshire County Council, and Councillor Lewis Cocking, Leader of Broxbourne Borough Council, Richard Davidson, who's Director at Wilmot Dixon, and Patsy Dell, Director of the Hertfordshire Growth Board, with Councillor Elizabeth Dennis Harburg, Leader of North Hertfordshire District Council. What a panel. Viewers, it's up to you to make the most of this panel over the next hour. We welcome your questions through the Q&A function, and we'll address as many of those as we can during the course of the conversation. We've also got quite a few polls for you, so you can contribute to the discussion by responding to those when they pop up on your screens. And we'll try and get everyone involved straight away. We're going to launch our first poll now, which is around making Hertfordshire investment and delivery ready. And the question is, what's the biggest growth challenge facing Hertfordshire? Now, that's on your screens now. And while you respond to it, I'm going to welcome Councillor Phil Bibby to the conversation to kick us off. Phil, from that video, we got some idea of what HEART is. I'm intrigued. Is it a bus? Is it a tram? Is it a train? Could you give us a bit of information on the detail, perhaps, and tell us how confident you are that it's going to be delivered and that it's going to provide the foundations needed to support the growth coming across the county?
Good morning, Toby, and good morning, everyone else. Well, the HEART is short for the Herts Essex Rapid Transit, probably the most exciting infrastructure project Hertfordshire's seen in modern times. It will run from Hemel Hempstead and West Watford, past St Albans to Harlow, and potentially Stansted Airport, which we see as quite an important link to get people to the airport. The A414 corridor is already congested, and with plans for 100,000 new homes and new jobs across the county over the next 15 years, there's a need for a more sustainable east-west link, which is central to our vision for cleaner, greener, healthier Hertfordshire. I'm always asked the question, what's it going to look like? As yet, we haven't decided on what technology to use, because let's face it, by the time this gets on the ground, we won't know what technology is available. It could be a tram, it could be a light rail, it could be a guided busway, etc. It could be an autonomous vehicle. Who knows? We're keeping our options open on that one. We're now exploring options with the aim of submitting a strategic outline business case to the Department for Transport in spring 2022. Engagement has already begun with local communities, civic groups, businesses and other organisations to hear what they want, which is very important. And we will obviously consult along the way as detail emerges. It's one thing consulting on the concept, it's another thing consulting and getting people's views on what's going to happen and how it will affect their lives. A project of this scale, as you can imagine, will need a substantial investment from local and central governments, as well as private sector partners. So it is up to us to gain local and national support for what we know is necessary for the long-term prosperity of the county.
How forthcoming do you think that support is going to be?
We're getting a lot of positive noises at the moment, including the Department for Transport. Obviously, it's going to be a very, very expensive project and possibly won't be delivered all in one go. But I think everyone realises this is really needed in Hertfordshire to link up east-west. We're very good at north-south linkages, but east-west is a bit of a problem for us, and this will help us in the long-term future.
Thanks, Phil. Certainly the viewers are sort of sharing your measure of its importance, and providing new infrastructure to support population growth is certainly the sort of the biggest priority according to our viewers. So we're matching their thoughts at least. But I did notice, Elizabeth, that some of the arrows coming out of the heart on that video that we just watched, they're really sort of stretching to reach north. How far does this answer the infrastructure needs of North Hertfordshire and the growth that you're anticipating there?
I think for us in the north, while the system seems to be a great idea to create those east-west links in the south of the county and start to join things up, we're relying obviously on that then linking into our existing transport networks and people using the north-south connection. There isn't at this moment in time any infrastructure to link east-west across the north of the county and link into, for example, through into Bedfordshire, where there are jobs that our residents commute out to, but equally that residents in Bedfordshire and the more northerly parts of Essex commute into the county. So while we support and are broadly welcoming of the Hart project, I think those councils that sit in the northern arc of the Hertfordshire county would like to see sort of a wider project that can also include our residents and support our growing infrastructure needs too.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Phil.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I totally agree with Elizabeth, and whatever this transit system looks like in the end and what route it takes, because that is obviously very undecided at the moment, I'm very keen, and officers are very keen with me, to make sure that wherever it is, there is connectivity to the rest of the county. There's no point in having a fantastic bit of kit going across the county east to west if we can't connect with other important parts. So that is very much on our agenda.
Great stuff. Thanks, Phil. Richard, when as an investor, you know, when you're looking at locations for investment and opportunities coming forward, how important, how much weight do you place on schemes like Hart that we've just seen? Is it all a bit too future, fanciful, or does that look like something that's really useful and solid and attractive and compelling?
Yeah, I think for the people that I speak to, so whether we're investors or part of that investor group, is having a plan, a forward view is much more helpful to us, because, you know, we don't just plan in an 18-month cycle. We do think about where we are 5, 10, 15 years and helping people with their funds and spending them in the right place. So we need to see good, clear, bold visions like this to kind of give us the confidence to remain investing in the region. And I was just commenting as someone who lives in the south of Hertfordshire, whose office is in the north of Hertfordshire, that east-west link can actually kind of help with that connectivity, because getting to Hitchin from St Albans requires a bus and a train, or a bike and a bus and a train. And, you know, so I think it can be really powerful to the different parts of the region. So yeah, vision, strategy, plans is what we look for. So this is, I think, a really bold, future ready step for us.
Thanks, Richard. And Lewis, is this plan sort of supporting the growth program that you've got in Broxbourne as well?
Yeah, I think it is, because I do think east-west connectivity has been a problem for the county. We're particularly good at north-south, particularly for my residents in Broxbourne. We're more north-south in terms of like the A10 to and from London. Obviously, we've got some investment going at Junction 25 on the M25, so this will all feed into that, because that will allow people then to use that north-south route, who can then connect into the east-west that this plan does. So I think it delivers for all residents of Hertfordshire.
Yeah, thanks, Lewis. Charles, does a program like the Hart, does that open up new opportunities for the development of homes?
Thanks, Toby, and morning, everyone. Infrastructure obviously is key, as the poll shows, what the people on the webinar see as well, and we'd sort of echo that. So from a Homes England perspective, as the government agency looking to work and support the councils in helping them to meet their ambitions for growth, we would absolutely use the tools at our disposal to reflect upon infrastructure requirements and setting out something, as you said, something that a direction of travel to facilitate planned growth that authorities are looking to achieve is clearly something absolutely that we take into account and is very helpful.
Great, thanks, Charles. Patsy, it'd be interesting to hear about any of the sort of specific aspects of the Growth Board's programme that Hart is supporting and enabling. But also, perhaps you could move the conversation on to the sort of next theme that we wanted to address, which is around COVID recovery and all the funding that's going to be available, or is it to support your programme as well?
So the Hart is really important to us as we think about planned growth that we've got in Hertfordshire, the 100,000 homes, of which around 50,000 of those are located along that east-west corridor that the Hart is planned for. So it's strategically important thinking about where growth is going now, but also to underpin future growth. We're already working on our thinking and joint strategic planning activities for the period out to 2050, and having a decarbonised, sustainable, active travel network that will help with the congestion issues we have in Hertfordshire, as well as meeting our climate change ambitions in the long term, gives us a tremendous advantage in thinking about the future shape of and location of growth in Hertfordshire. So it's really important now and in the future for what we're doing. Moving on to what we've been doing through the Growth Board, through its convening role with all the councils and the local enterprise partnership in Hertfordshire. In terms of fast tracking recovery, we've had a very broad-based programme looking to support our economic clusters, sectors. We've looked at our high streets and what support we can give them. These growth corridors we've talked about in the north and south are fundamental to what's happening in the county. The one in the south, for example, has a garden town, a garden community, a garden village, and town centre regeneration happening along it. So they are important locations for growth in Hertfordshire that we've been working on through the convening power of the Growth Board. We've set up and have a well-established programme and project architecture supporting this work across Hertfordshire, the Hertfordshire system, as it were, of local government, the LEP, Health, and now Homes England, who are part of the Growth Board, coming together to work on our issues. And we have this obviously strategic body that we've just set up recently, the Hertfordshire Infrastructure and Development Board, which is enabling us to have really strategic high-level conversations with our sector partners about what help they need from us, but also what our ambitions are for future growth in Hertfordshire to be done in a green, inclusive, low carbon, net zero way, and also the standards of sustainable, high quality placemaking we want to encourage the sector to work with us and deliver. So it's a multifaceted approach, I think, that we're taking forward, but really strengthened by that collaborative convening role that the Growth Board and all our partners in the Hertfordshire system are bought into.
Fantastic. I'm going to multitask now. I'm going to launch another poll, which is going to ask our viewers what they see as what should be the main objectives for the Growth Board. But at the same time, ask you, Patsy, what are the key challenges that you face in delivering that sort of wish list that you set out there?
So, I mean, the drivers for the Growth Board have been around making sure we have the infrastructure to support those growth needs. And the last work that we undertook on putting a price tag on that growth was around 6 billion in terms of the cost of the infrastructure. So a not insignificant amount that needs to be found through private sector and public bodies to make sure that that's there on time and in the right place. We need to address the issues with our housing market. You know, we have affordability and access problems in Hertfordshire, and we also need to deliver more to make sure we're meeting our needs. We need to think about left behind communities who don't all benefit from, you know, the economic prosperity that, you know, we see generally in Hertfordshire. We are lucky as far as we're a net contributor to UK PLC, but the benefits of that economic success are not shared equally across Hertfordshire. And we have, for example, health inequalities such as, you know, long-term life expectancy are different across Hertfordshire. There are issues there that we need to make sure that we're tackling. We want to support our key sectors so they continue to grow for the benefit of everywhere, but obviously particularly for Hertfordshire. You know, the cell and gene, life sciences, and the film and TV are world-class, globally important sectors that we host in Hertfordshire and need to support so that we can have those benefits, leverage social value and economic benefits for everybody. And of course, climate, carbon issues, think about Hertfordshire's future, but our contribution to the planet in those terms, they're key challenges. I think looking at availability of funding, we need to have a strategy that focuses on what we can do locally and is self-sufficient, but also entices investment into Hertfordshire. So we're supporting the conditions for investment to come. We're working with government. I think they're clear on our ambitions in Hertfordshire and that we're a place that has a delivery track record. We can provide certainty, but you know, we've got a good understanding of the problems that we face here and solutions. We'd like to be in a partnership, I think, with the private sector and government to try and tackle those issues. So I hope the message over that we're open for business
Thanks, Patsy. I'm just going to zero in on that funding issue, if you'll forgive me. I mean, it is always the elephant in the room with these things, and also our viewer Danny Kay is asking specifically how the rapid transit is going to be paid for and funded. What's your ask specifically of government at the moment, Patsy, and how are you going about encouraging them?
So I think, government's been really clear that they want places to have a really good understanding of the local problems they're trying to solve and an idea of how they're going to get about it. Government's not here to come in and help areas. They're to solve those problems. They want to work in partnership with areas. So I think we've really signalled what our ambitions are in Hertfordshire and how we're tackling particular problems and challenges that we have, and we are getting on with them through the work of the Growth Board and other areas. I think we'd like support to be able to retain some of the revenue generated in Hertfordshire to invest in projects like the Heart, which will be for the benefit of residents and beyond Hertfordshire as an investment that will help support our economy. So we're looking broadly as well as specifically for the benefit of Hertfordshire. We want to make sure we still bring in, revenue and private sector investment to Hertfordshire. That's probably going to be much more important going forward than, government's got some hard choices to make about where it invests this country's money. We need to make sure we're still earning money for this country through our the net revenue generated in Hertfordshire. I think we'd like recognition that to do that, there are things that we need help and support with.
Yeah. Thanks, Patsy. Phil, specifically on the Heart. I mean, it's interesting. Our survey just now of viewers found that the economic growth is a priority for the Hertfordshire Growth Board post COVID-19 for only 8% of viewers, and I think that probably reflects the fact that Hertfordshire's a really well-functioning, a high-performing economy already. But of course, that poses a problem, doesn't it? Because the government's agenda is about levelling up. So when you're asking the government for funding for something like Heart, how realistic is it, do you think, that it's going to be high up enough on the priority list compared to all the other infrastructure requirements before government now?
I think it is realistic. Obviously, the main aim of the government now is HS1 and levelling up. HS2 is a watered down version. I don't think they're going to forget Hertfordshire, because let's face it, the South East and Hertfordshire drives the UK economy still, and it will continue to do for a long while. You still need the South East and Hertfordshire economy. So I think we won't be forgotten. I mean, going on to the funding, obviously, I mean, we're talking about the private sector. And when I've mentioned 100,000 new homes over the next 15 years, that's a lot of developers who are capable of actually contributing a lot of money towards infrastructure improvements. Because when you build a house, we always look to developers contributing to the infrastructure needs of the area. So it won't be just government, it won't be just local authority, it will also be private industry and developers.
Thanks, Phil. And Elizabeth, when we were talking about this issue before the episode today, before the session started, you were talking also about the way that that the requests for funding are kind of organised and orchestrated, if you like, through government. And you had some interesting points to make about how organisations like the Growth Board might be able to kind of aggregate local authority requirements.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I think sort of picking up on what Patsy said, government shouldn't really be there to be helping. That's horrible. We're asking government to help us, but actually we're the ones as local leaders who know what our local economies and our people need best. But we have seen local government funding cut and stripped right back. We're constantly only getting 1 year financial settlements, which makes it really, really difficult to budget for the long term. So, for example, at the moment, if I need to make efficiency savings in my budget at North Herts on a year-by-year basis, I'm looking at £2 million savings over the next 5 years. If we had a longer-term funding settlement, that efficiency requirement would be stripped back to about 700,000 over the same period of time. That's a big difference. Imagine the transformative change I could deliver in my district without needing to involve the Herts Growth Board with things and bid for pots of money from central government. And that bidding point brings me to, I think, one of the things that's irritated me the most. We had the Future High Streets funds that many will be familiar with. You could only submit one bid per district, so per council area. Now, if like me, you've got 4 main high streets in your town, in your district, how do you pick which scheme, which project is most deserving of being put forward for that funding? And then once you do put that scheme forward, you're competing against every other county, every other council in the country. There's no guarantee of money, and we need the money to deliver the change our people need. We now look at the Levelling Up Fund. The Herts Growth Board has submitted a really strong, really solid Levelling Up bid. We don't know what the outcome of that is going to be. We're going to say that we're positive about it, but we're also competing against the likes of Greater Manchester, who have an incredibly transformative transport programme that's looking to turn the whole of that area's transport network into something akin to Transport for London. How on earth is Hertfordshire going to compete with Andy Burnham's grand scheme? It's an absolute nonsense, and local government has always been best when we all come together and work together. What we're seeing at the moment is central government actually pitting us against each other, and it's very much an Oliver Twist situation where we're having to say, please, Michael Gove, can we have some more? And that's also a massive drain on our officer resource and time. What could be done better to support us in delivering change for our residents?
That's a really interesting point, Elizabeth. Thanks. And it draws attention to that really interesting aspect of local government, which is that you always have more in common than you have that you disagree about, whatever your political party in local authorities. So yeah, interesting point. Now we're going to come back to some of that sort of aspects of private sector investment shortly, but I want to just turn to Broxbourne, Lewis, and pursue this levelling up agenda a little bit. What does it look like in a place like Broxbourne, and how are you making sure that you've got this sort of inclusive and resilient economy for everyone, despite the sort of the difficulty of competing for funding that we've heard from Elizabeth and others?
Well, I think one of the biggest things we've got going for us in Hertfordshire is we've got this growth board. We're all sitting down together. Let's look at where strategic growth can go, because I think once we get through this local plan period, in terms of, I'm a geographer by background, we need to create new settlements and new towns. There is no more add-ons. So we all need to get together in terms of, let's look strategically in terms of where can this growth go, and then share out the benefits across the wider region. Because if you can put all of the growth in one place, sometimes then you get the infrastructure that goes with it, because more often than not, when you do add-ons, the infrastructure either doesn't come or gets put onto local roads. And we go to so many things where highways people will tell us, unfortunately, no criticism, Phil, they'll say there's no traffic on the road, but I've sat in traffic to get there. I get that it's a fine balancing act, and I get that we have to go through all of that, but hopefully with creating those new strategic settlements, we can get around that issue. I mean, in Broxbourne, Patsy stole my line, we are open for business. Everyone in Hertfordshire, I think, is open for business. Come and talk to us if you want to do development in our areas, because I think it's right in terms of the government's doing their levelling up agenda, and we've had some major success in putting in bids for the communities renewal funds. We've had 100% success rate. We've got £3 million for 5 projects across Hertfordshire, but I also think the private sector has got to do its bit. I mean, in Broxbourne, we've got £1 billion of private sector investment. We've got 400 million in Brookfield, 700 million in a new film studio, which I will make it my mission for as many residents as Hertfordshire to be upskilled as possible through our local schools and our colleges to get those jobs locally, because then I think that feeds into the wider thing of the Hertfordshire Growth Board in terms of making sure the environment and the economy are both fit for the future.
Fantastic, Lewis. Thank you. And you've got Sunsight Studios proposed £700 million development, for example, mentioned just now. How do you make sure that local people are going to benefit from that investment? And that plays into a question from Mike Diath in the audience, which is our most popular question currently, which is around balancing the need for progressive planning to deliver the housing ambitions as well as commercial ambitions like the studios, while tackling the opposition you get from local people and their representatives, their political representatives, because development sadly does not seem to be a vote winner.
Well, I think how we've done it in Broxbourne is you've got to take people with you. You've got to be open and honest in terms of where development is going, allow them to feed into that process, allow them to feed into those consultations, and be quite upfront with that in terms of we won't get any new infrastructure unless we have growth. So we can either stay as we are, or we can try and grow in a more sustainable way. And in terms of, I suppose, what we're trying to do in Hertfordshire, that's the reason why we've put in growth deals to government to ask for powers around adult skills, educational skills, skills to upskill people, particularly in Broxton we have low attainment. So let's upskill people so they can get the jobs locally, because you're quite right in terms of once we've had economic growth and once it's built and the land is gone, we've missed our opportunity. That is going to be a massive upheaval for us in Hertfordshire to achieve that. I believe we can do it. Let's get those powers from government. Let's work with the educational sector to upskill people, because again, that means people can walk from Waltham Cross to the film studios to go to work. They don't need to get in a car, so it relieves pressure off the A10. So there's numerous benefits in terms of that. You give people a better start in life, you lift people out of poverty, you give them better careers, they've got more money to spend in the high streets that we all know are struggling. So there's numerous positive things can come from that, and I will make it my mission to ensure that the majority of those jobs at those two sites go to Hertfordshire residents.
It's fighting talk. Thanks, Lewis. Charles, this issue of sort of making people aware of the benefits of development and growth and new homes is really important, isn't it? You wanted to say something, I think, around the idea of healthy places and how we're making sure people know the sorts of places we're creating.
Yeah, and I think it really is a very exciting opportunity around that. Obviously, in Hertfordshire, there's proposals for a couple of new sort of settlements at Gilston and also at Hemel, and in both of those, there's a very strong, healthy aspect to the sort of master planning and the thoughts that are going on from both officers and local leaders. And at Homes England, we sort of very much welcome and endorse that, and we're looking to support that ourselves. We use a design guide called Building for Healthy Life that we wrote in partnership with NHS England and NHS Improvement. And it's that holistic, a cross-cutting thing that, it's very easy to think about housing in sort of isolation, but actually it's not, it's clearly where people live, but it's very much about life chances as well, isn't it? About, and it can play a really positive aspect if it's designed well, in terms of how it encourages people to walk, cycle, and what in terms of social aspects as well. So that's something that we really welcome, and it's a real positive, and it's something that we're sort of deploying on our own sites when we bring those forward to market as well.
Thanks, Charles. And that sort of plays into a question that's coming in from Andrew Scarth, which is around green belt. And I think what the question's getting at is, with so much housing required, can we be sure that that green belt, which is so important to our well-being and healthy living, is protected? Charles, do you want to make a comment on that, and then Patsy?
I mean, certainly from a Homes England perspective, obviously we work within obviously the direction of government in terms of planning policies and their direction, and of course, very, very importantly for today, it's very much around what the local planning authorities across Hertfordshire see as their priorities and where they think growth should be. So our role is very much to work with the grain of the local ambition rather than having a view ourselves as an agency.
Thanks, Patsy.
Yeah, I mean, it is tricky because we do have huge areas of the metropolitan greenbelt in Hertfordshire, but we also have and recognise that we've housing needs to deliver. So, I think the local plan process is very challenging. People care very much about, having green spaces and places to go. And COVID has really put a huge emphasis on the importance, and we've got, biodiversity net gain requirements to think about as well now. I think it's a fact that not all of the green belt is the same, the same quality. So local plans process looks very carefully at, redesignating green belt boundaries. Those are not easy decisions, but I think you've got to look very carefully at the quality and the quantitative and access issues. Are parts of our green belt available, and balance up where are the best sites for us to accommodate Hertfordshire's growth. So, it's a very careful exercise in curating the land we have in Hertfordshire. Nobody looks at the green belt lightly, but on occasions, we've got to balance that acute need for housing in Hertfordshire with, some of the quality of parts of our green belt. And there's nothing to stop us, and we are doing in our new settlements, having country parks and new green spaces coming forward. So there is a balance that's being delivered across a county like Hertfordshire. We've not necessarily talked about redesignating new green belt, but with new settlement and new growth that's coming forward, there are new public green spaces that will fall within a stewardship regime that will be publicly accessible and available. So I think that quid pro quo needs to be factored in our thinking, when we're looking at that long-term planning across Hertfordshire.
Thanks. And that plays into exactly what Giles was talking about, this idea of healthy places. It incorporates green, doesn't it? And the new regulations on biodiversity and green space and so on that are going to ensure that the places we build are healthy and pleasant places to live. Richard, I think you wanted to make a comment, and then I want to go to Elizabeth.
Yeah, Patsy said some good things there about the green belt. I think there is a more mature conversation to be had about what is green belt, good quality green belt, where we can enhance and be realistic about the plans. So I think welcoming that view you made, Patsy. I was just going to remind ourselves is who are we building these homes for? We're building them for our children, because there aren't any affordable homes for our children in Hertfordshire. So where are they going to go? And I think that's about keeping families closer together. That's part of the reason why we need these homes. And we shouldn't be scared of saying that. I think I've been to too many meetings where people say, 10,000 homes are going to be built. Yeah, that's because our kids need somewhere to go to. They need to have an aspiration to have their own home, not a little rabbit coop. So I think we have to remember we're doing this for people. We're not doing this for developers to make money. We're doing this because people need somewhere to live. And
Thanks, Richard.
That is lost sometimes in the debate. Thank you.
No, it's an important point, and I'll pass it over to Elizabeth. And if you'd like to pick up on any of those threads, Elizabeth, I'd welcome that. But I'd also be interested. I mean, we talked a lot about the film industry and the kind of creative side of things in Broxbourne. Hertfordshire's about more than that, and your thoughts on the other sectors and how they're performing, particularly post COVID-19, and how that's impacted town centres and the sort of road to recovery that you're seeing.
Yes, no, thank you very much. I think the film industry, sort of, we tend to think about it sometimes and we put ourselves in a box of just looking at what's going on in the south of the county. But of course, across the entire county, we've got locations that are regularly used for out of studio filming activity. And I think that there's absolutely potentially scope for us to really start growing the industry more widely than just focusing in the south of the county. But putting the creative industries to one side, we've got a very strong biomedical sciences industry in Hertfordshire. GSK's got the biopark at Stevenage on our boundary and has hit that point where actually that site can no longer be expanded upon, but there's still call to have those jobs expanded within the county. So clearly building the infrastructure, creating the housing, creating the education and skills opportunity so that children in this county can be trained in the skills that are going to set them up for life in an industry that's close to home. They can live in affordable housing that's connected to where their parents are, where they work, etc., is incredibly vital. And if we create those jobs in industries and hold those sectors within this county, then our high streets within our towns and cities can continue to benefit. I think that we all know that the high street was under multiple threats pre-COVID, not least from the increase of online shopping and a particular online retailer who shall remain nameless. And obviously the pandemic has accelerated that transition from the traditional store to more online retail. And we are noticing the clear impact of that in town centres across the district. But not every town centre has been impacted in the same way. And the way that people use their town centres as we're recovering from COVID now seems to me to be changing as well. You've got more people working from home and utilising, for example, in Hitchin, the many coffee shops and cafes that we've got. There's an incredibly strong sort of boutique independent coffee shop industry that's sprung up there. And the footfall, I think, in some of our towns is remaining the same, is getting back to pre-COVID levels, which is great. Vacancy rates in Hitchin are at 3%, which is phenomenal given the wider picture when we look across the country. But what we are noticing is that it's the smaller units that are easier to let, and the larger, more expensive units are less attractive to businesses. So the type of businesses that are choosing to operate in our town centres has changed. Other towns within my district are not seeing the same story at all. I've got an increasing vacancy rate of units in Letchworth. The drivers for that could be COVID related, or they could be wider economy related. It's difficult to tell. We've got a piece of work that we're doing through the Hertfordshire Growth Board on regenerating and reinvigorating our our high streets across the county. And what we're hoping to achieve by working together is to identify interventions and solutions that the Growth Board can take to help support Hertfordshire high streets and sort of smaller clusters of shops, because not every district and borough has an identifiable high street. And I think our story is quite interesting when you contrast it with the changes of use in the bigger cities like London. There was a Centre for Cities report recently that's shown that footfall in London now is half what it was pre-COVID during the week. On the weekends, it's significantly higher. So you can hypothesize that's down to leisure travel going into the city. So if that's the story on London's high streets during the week, where are those people? They're at home. Where are they going to be spending their time? Where are they going to be spending their money? How can we entice them to keep that money within our local economy and to set up local businesses to benefit and help regenerate our high streets post-COVID?
Yeah, lots of opportunity, Elizabeth. Thanks for that. Just before, I think Lewis, you wanted to come in, but I'm just going to say we're getting lots of raised hands in the audience and lots of questions going into the chat. If you could put your questions into the Q&A, it helps me manage them and present them to the panel, but it also helps us see who's voting for which questions and which questions are most popular, so we can put those, we can give those some priority. Lewis.
I think what hasn't been mentioned about our town centres is we need to get people living in our town centres again. We've done a lot of work in Broxbourne in terms of in Hertfordshire. We've got about 250 units of over 55 accommodation across 3 sites. Let's get people living in our town centres, because then they're going to spend money. And if we're doing that type of over 55s accommodation, they can walk to the shop, they can walk to the doctors. They're then freeing up houses that people can upsize and downsize to across the wider scale. So I just think that's an important part. We want to keep the commuters that are not going into London anymore back into our high streets, but we also want to make sure people are living there, because unless we get people living in our town centres again, I do think we're going to face significant challenges as we come out of COVID.
That's a good point, Lewis. Charles, on that, I mean, tell us a little bit about, Patsy's mentioned that Homes England has joined the Hertfordshire Growth Board. Tell us a little bit about the relationship between Homes England and the HGB, but also the sort of balance of your interests across Hertfordshire. Are you focused on town centre opportunities, or where is it that you're seeing the main opportunities for Homes England to accelerate housing delivery?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's fantastic to be involved with the Growth Board, and we really welcome the partnership there. Our focus has been not just at the strategic level, but also very much at the detailed level about working with the Growth Board and its constituent authorities about a pipeline of sites, which sort of really plays back into your second question there. And that's really, really valuable piece of work that we've been doing to ensure that we have a really good collective understanding of where the housing sites are, and not just where they are, which is relatively simple, but that depth of understanding of why aren't they coming, if they're not coming forward in a timely way, what are the blockages around that, and how we can address that. So that pipeline does have town centre sites in it, but it also has sites, wider sites. It also has quite a lot of local authority owned sites, which again is sort of helpful in terms of understanding how those can be brought forward. So it's very much that focus on what can be delivered, how can Homes England work with the constituent authorities and the Growth Board to unblock some of those sites or accelerate them.
Thanks, Charles. Patsy, do you want to tell us a little bit about why you wanted Homes England as part of the Growth Board, and the sort of how that enhances what you can achieve?
I think Charles has given a really good example there of the work we've been doing together on our housing pipeline for Hertfordshire. So we're very clear about the focus on delivering the homes that we need in Hertfordshire, and they are, as you would expect, spread across our 10 districts and boroughs in a variety of formats, from garden towns, garden communities, to urban extensions, to, we have every type of town centre regen. We've got everything happening in terms of those sites in Hertfordshire, and a range of challenges as well. Big strategic sites have a long lead in. They need a lot of support, and working with the site promoters and the developers to bring them on stream. They have big infrastructure upfront loading on. So having a strategic partner with Homes England, working on our Growth Board on the joint endeavour about housing delivery in Hertfordshire is a real advantage for us. I think having that close relationship. Homes England are working in Hertfordshire. They've got their own demonstrator site for off-site manufacture, which is something we're really interested in helping diversify and increase the delivery supply and speed in Hertfordshire. So having that based, down in Broxbourne is really, really helpful. Homes England demonstrating in our area. So I think, it's all positive having them as a co-opted member on our growth board. Hopefully as well, we'll be able to access some of their affordable homes funding for some of the sites, as Charles mentioned, where they will actually help unlock and increase delivery. So all positive really for having them as a partner on the growth board.
Thanks, Patsy. Lewis, I'm going to turn to you for comment on this sort of growth program, but also specifically in response to a question from Paul Mumford, who's at Urban and Civic, who's a viewer today. He's asking about support for local plans, and I wonder from your perspective, how helpful is the growth board in helping you as local authorities, as a group of local authorities, promote your local plans to residents and get those put in place so that there can be some certainty around delivery?
I think that the Growth Board has done a tremendous amount of work in trying to get all of the local plans that haven't been able to get over the line for a number of different reasons to get over the line, in terms of doing a large engagement piece around, let's get out there what growth looks like in Hertfordshire. What does that mean for each local district? I mean, we're quite lucky in Broxton. We have got a local plan. It's gone through the consultation. We adopted, I think we're the second council in the country to adopt a local plan virtually back at the start of the pandemic. So we've done our bit, and it's up for everyone to do their bit. And we're trying to engage with businesses. Is probably why we've set up the development forum, because in hand with that, absolutely, through that consultation process, we need to engage with our residents, we need to sell it. And I can suppose link into what some of the other panelists have said. When I knock on a door in Broxbourne, and I'm like, well, where do you want my generation to live if we're not doing our bit, here? And then they kind of understand that, and you can, as I said, if you're open, honest and transparent with people, you can kind of take them on that journey with you. And then the other side of that is that developers forum, in terms of come and speak to us. We are open for business. We won't take any old rubbish, if I can say that. We want good quality housing, and we will push back, and we will make you jump through lots of hoops if you don't do what we've asked you to do. So we will be tough on that, but we are open for business, and we can best deliver that growth and the housing and the infrastructure that Hertfordshire needs if we all work together, because at the end of the day, we all want to achieve the same aims.
Thanks, Lewis, and forgive me for pushing on this, but a lot of our viewers are from the private sector, and local plans are often a bugbear from externally. And I wonder, is the Growth Board a useful mechanism for you to share that experience that you had in successfully delivering your local plan, and perhaps pass on some sort of best practice?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think local plans are a good thing. They put local people in control over where development is going to be. And I think the reason why some people make some comments around they're not a good thing is because I suppose time and time again, developers do what we don't want them to do. They don't come and talk to us. They don't build high quality housing. If you engage with us, we can take you on that journey through that process. Let us help you. Yes, we will want the best for our residents, and we do want that high quality housing. But unless you work with us, of course, if you're going to go away and pick a site and not deliver high quality housing, of course it's going to take a long time to get through the planning system. Of course there are going to be delays with that, because you're not delivering what we want to see in our districts and boroughs. I think local plans are a good thing, because once they're in place, everyone's then on a level playing field in terms of where that growth is going to go. The residents have been consulted on that, and I think if we don't have local plans, then we see that part where the resident gets to feed into that go away, which is the most important thing from my perspective. But happy to share best practice. That's what we're doing as a Hertfordshire Growth Board. We've split off into two groups, North East and Central, and the western side, in terms of where can we look strategically for development once the local plans come to an end. So we're doing significant work around trying to engage with everybody. But I get that it's difficult for some districts and boroughs, and some developers will find it incredibly painful, but please work with us. We are open for business, and at the end of the day, we do want to deliver.
Great, thanks, Lewis. Elizabeth and Phil, if you'd like to make a comment on any of those threads, just do the raise hand bit. But I just want to pass over to Richard now and get a kind of private sector perspective on some of this. Private sector perspective on the work of the Growth Board, Richard, for example, in bringing local plans forward, and the developers forum that Lewis mentioned, how useful that is for you as an engagement mechanism, but also a private sector view on this kind of 100,000 homes target. It was mentioned earlier that by Phil that that a lot of the benefits of growth come out of private sector contributions from development profits to local infrastructure. I mean, how the 100,000 target, the 100,000 homes, that's a big juicy opportunity for the private sector. But the ask in terms of infrastructure and contributions, does that put you off at all?
I was going to, there's quite a few things there, Toby, thank you. I think the first thing I was going to go is just to respond to Councillor Cocking, really, is when there are rules, when they're clear, when they seem fair, then that's when people want to engage. And I think it's when you have disparity between areas and regions and even maybe officer interpretations, I think that's when it feels difficult. That's when there's friction. So anything you can do to ease that friction, I think that's a really positive thing. So it's encouraging to hear that you're open for business, you want to engage, you want to talk. It needs to be fair and equal and proportionate. So I think that's what we're always looking for. When we know the rules, we play. That's how it happens. And when there aren't rules, that's when some people make their own ones up. I'm not saying that's me, and maybe that's just a vision of what happens. Having the developer board, the growth board, is really powerful because I think it shows that you want to talk. It shows you want to engage, that it's not behind closed doors. There's a transparency not just for business but for the public at large, and they can see that there's a good quality engagement. So we can't be accused of maybe activities that would have happened 30, 40 years ago. So I think it's a really positive step forward. And I've been engaged with another very similar board in a neighbouring county. And again, those conversations between councils, private sector, they are open, and real problems get solved in a really positive way. So I think that's what it's about. And I've met Patsy a number of times, some of the other councillors I've met across the county, and that's what it's all about. Where we work together, that's the power of a public-private engagement, a private partnership, if you want. So I think that's really powerful for us. I think there are some great opportunities. 100,000, it's a big number. I think the thing I always say to people is don't just think about the number of houses, but the number of schools, the health centres, the roads, the buses. I sound like a Monty Python sketch here, don't I? What have the Romans done for us? It's all the things that happen as well. And I do sometimes want to challenge and say, don't say 100,000 homes. You might say that is X number of new families, or families that can grow and stay together. That's also investment in hospitals. It's going to take a long time to get things sorted out around health investment. So we need to bring that together. And I think everyone recognises that they need to contribute as well. There will be lots of developers probably throwing things and saying, viability is a real challenge. I think some of that viability in Hertfordshire is driven because of the challenge around available land. And because land availability is scarce, the price goes up. We all know supply and demand is the big challenge here. So I think that visibility of places to develop helps us to understand what's going on with land values. And then that means that we can kind of take a different view, maybe, or we can understand what's going to happen. And, let's not get into a conversation about viability, but it is about viability is important, because if it doesn't stack up, someone won't invest, the bank won't lend to you. So we have to make a story to a bank to say, yes, this works, or no, this doesn't work. And if someone says, well, let's see what we can get, let's get a discount off the council, that's somewhere where someone's going to go, aren't they? It's logical. We shouldn't do it, maybe, but that can be a logical mechanism. So I think we want to engage, and we can move forward. I think our challenge is actually providing materials and resources to build that growth. So I think that's our area for investment. But again, if we know where the growth is, then we can start to invest in factories, technologies, education pieces, because you can't do those overnight. You just cannot do it overnight. So if you tell me where you want to build for the next 10 years, then we can start to invest in everything else that makes it happen.
And that's a really interesting way in which local people benefit from development. And it's often unseen, that, isn't it, in the initial conversations around growth, the fact that you are actually creating jobs in factories that are producing the houses that are going to be built. I just want to come back to something you said about materials, but firstly, I think Elizabeth, you wanted to come in on this.
Yes, thank you very much. Firstly, I'm incredibly jealous of Lewis having a local plan that's managed to get through the process. I think we're 5 years in chain still with the inspector and it's not come through yet, which clearly creates frustrations and difficulties for us as an authority, but also for our residents. However, I was really pleased to sort of hear Richard's support for the contributions through technical term, the Section 106 funding that councils can require, because a lot of the time, actually, new housing developments don't just exist. No housing development exists in a bubble, does it? They all sort of impact. We need to improve our infrastructure. So our ability as an authority to come up with a reasonable scheme to get funding to support things like improving access to train stations, improving the roads, etc., is absolutely critical. And I think one of the values of the Growth Board is our ability to start thinking strategically and working together across the districts and boroughs and looking at where we might place things like potential new settlements for the future, and to scope out and to take that time and have that space away from all the usual planning bureaucracy to really think about where are we going to build these new communities, not just these new houses, because it's not just a house, it's an entire community. What impact is that going to have on our local economy? What skills do we need to generate? What education opportunities do we need to create? And all of a sudden, everything that we've been talking about today ties up and links together, because if you don't create that community with the community infrastructure, then you can't possibly support your local economies and regenerate your high streets and reinvigorate how local spending patterns work and support local businesses change and adapt to deal with post-COVID world or whatever the next crisis might be. So I think it's been a really great session, and it's good to hear us all linking together.
Thanks, Elizabeth. That's great. And I'm just asking our viewers what they see as the biggest attractions to Hertfordshire in terms of investment and development. But Richard, I just want to come back to something you mentioned, which is the sort of scarcity of materials and also the scarcity of labour. You know, there is a skills shortage around a lot of the kind of technical skills that are required to bring all this growth forward, around things like planning and planning law and so on, as well as on building sites. And how do you see that picture developing from the point of view of a construction and development company? How short are our materials and how scarce is labour? And what steps are being taken to sort of cover those problems?
It's not a pretty picture at the moment, if I'm honest. Yeah, I mean, it's well known that there are material challenges, not just in the construction sector, but worldwide. There's no simple quick fix. If there was, we probably all would have told the government what the exact fix is, but maybe I'm not here to talk about politics. So there is a materials challenge. There is a skills challenge. It's been in our sector for a long time. We probably haven't done the right things to address that. But actually, I think if we look forward, I think one of the interesting challenges for us is making sure that the materials that we use moving forward are more sustainable. And that could be from whether they're locally sourced, whether they are, in their manufacture, they generate less carbon, or they can even, absorb carbon. I think we have to do that. We have to move to that. We have to transition to a low carbon economy. That's a given. So we are trying to work out how to invest in those. There is a risk in that, and which is a challenge, which maybe that's something that affects affordability. But the other thing we can do is invest more in different ways of manufacturing and creating buildings, which that's what we're trying to do. But it is a test, and our sector is maybe a little bit risk averse, but that's because we're spending gigantic amounts of money on things. So that's maybe understandable. So I think the future can be positive if we adopt the right mindset. I think we do have to move. We have to move away from some of the traditional materials. And I think that's something to discuss in local plans. Is we've got very used to what we've built, but actually, though, some of those materials aren't really fit for the future. Digging holes to take clay out of the ground to make bricks, I would debate whether that's sustainable. So I think that's something we need to look at, and we need to have a very grown-up conversation about what that looks like. Hertfordshire isn't covered in forests; it should have more, but we can still build with timber if we wanted to. So yeah, it's a very multifaceted conversation that I can't get done in 1 minute.
Thanks, Richard. Well, let's take that as our closing point then. That we've got issues around materials, we've got issues around skills, and obviously there's issues around the climate and how we can make growth sustainable. So I'm going to go around the panel one by one. So I'm giving you all fair warning, and I'm chasing one thing that you're doing or implementing or bringing forward either through the Growth Board or independently to address any of those issues. And I'm going to start with Patsy.
Thanks, Toby. I think the fact that we're trying to join up and convene our efforts and thinking, for me, is the strongest thing.
Thanks very much, and giving everybody a chance to keep thinking. I'm just going to point out that our viewers have just said that 100% of our viewers have found it very or quite useful to attend the session today. So panel, you've done a fantastic job. And I'm going to go to Phil next. Phil, what are you doing to address skills, materials shortages, and the issues around sustainability?
Well, obviously, we're talking very closely with our contractors to make sure that they have good supply chains. They are under an extreme amount of challenge at the moment, it has to be said, both in labour and in materials. But thankfully, our contractors are coping very well. People will be interested in how we're going to get the gritters out on the roads this winter. They've probably already seen them. We have got a full complement of HGV drivers, for example. So we've got a full stock of salt, so we've got no problems there. On sustainability, we're reprocuring our main contracts in 2024, and we'll be very keen to make sure that any bidders or tenderers will have a sustainable credential about them and be able to take us forward in a sustainable and flexible way. I mean, we're already starting working with Ringway, who have actually trialled an electric site where all the tools, hand tools and big tools and welfare centres, etc., and trucks have all been powered by electricity. So that is a thing of the future, which we'll be looking to see from our contractors all across the piece.
Fantastic, Phil. Thanks very much. Elizabeth, over to you.
Lovely, thank you. So on sustainability, once our local plan gets passed, we have a new design SPD, which will have a number of environmental measures in there. But something that we're acting on now as a council is we've just last week installed solar panels on the roof of the district council offices. It's a very small change, but actually when you think about how much energy those lights use, it adds up and it makes a big difference. We're also giving away 10,000 trees to residents to plant across the district. They're all native deciduous trees, and we will be considering local biodiversity when people contact us asking for a sapling as well, to ensure that there's no damage to ecosystems.
Great stuff, Elizabeth. Thank you. Lewis, what's happening in Broxbourne?
Well, I've sort of alluded to it in one of my previous answers, but we're working with the schools and colleges to upskill, because, as I said, we've got that significant growth, that £1 billion of private sector investment. We've got this one opportunity to lift people, change people's lives, essentially, once we upskill them and they can get jobs locally. So that's what we're doing. We're working with Hertfordshire Regional College, our local schools and secondary schools, and with the Growth Board, so hopefully we can get those powers from government around adult education and that skill set to uplift people's skills to get their jobs locally. Because, as I said, that has knock-on effects. If they can then walk to work, that helps the environment and that creates sustainable economic growth as well. So that's what we're doing in Broxbourne. And as I've said, I'm going to make it my mission to make sure as many Hertfordshire residents get as many of those jobs as possible.
It's a great mission, Lewis. It's so important for the future of the county. Charles, what about Homes England? How are you addressing these issues?
So construction sort of methodology, a huge priority for us. Modern methods of construction, a local example in Hemel, where at Spencer's Park we've agreed a deal with Countryside Properties, who are building 590 homes incorporating very, very high levels of modern methods of construction. And above and beyond that, as part of that, we're doing a research project using those homes and using that experience as a number of similar schemes across the country that can then be rolled out to help other house builders, get more confidence in this space.
Fantastic, thanks, Charles. And Richard, the last word to you as our sponsor and effectively our host today. It's only fair to give you the last word on this.
Well, thank you very much, Toby. I was thinking hard about this answer. So in the new year, in Q1, we will have our demonstrator net zero carbon house at the BRE available for people to look at, building on the last 10 years of net zero building. I think we can bring a lot of lessons learned, and I want to share that actively with Hert's Growth Board and show them the mistakes we've made as well as the successes, to point people in the right direction, because we can't do net zero on our own as Wilmot Dixon.
Brilliant stuff. Thank you, Richard. And that is the last word, viewers. So join me in thanking our brilliant panel for sharing their valuable time with us today. Virtual applause, I'm sure, is ringing out across Hertfordshire and beyond. And I hope we've given you a sense of both the kind of optimism and ambition in Hertfordshire, but also the readiness of the county to deliver on some of those ambitions and its partners to take part in that, and the work of the Growth Board in bringing all of that together and giving you an appetite for working with that Growth Board and those partners to secure that future, that really bright future for Hertfordshire. So on behalf of our viewers, thank you to Charles Amies from Homes England. Thank you to Councillor Phil Bibby from Hertfordshire County Council. And thank you to Councillor Lewis Cocking from Broxbourne Borough Council. And thank you to Patsy Dell from Hertfordshire Growth Board. And thank you, Elizabeth Dennis Harburg from North Hertfordshire District Council. And thank you to Richard Davidson of Wilmot Dixon, both for your contribution to the conversation, but also for sponsoring this event and making it possible. But most of all, viewers, as ever, thanks to you for, again, tuning in and gracing us with your attention and fueling the conversation with loads of great questions. We've got a few of those left hanging, but if you join our LinkedIn Members Club, you'll find responses from our panel circulating there over the coming days. And thank you for responding to the polls so readily as well. Now, we're going to be back in the new year with a final session in this series on Hertfordshire. And before that, on the 14th of December, I'm back at 4 p.m. with the new leader of London Borough of Lambeth, Councillor Claire Holland, for a wide-ranging one-to-one interview about her career and ambitions for Lambeth. So registration details for that will be in the chat now. Meanwhile, from our excellent panel from Wilmot Dixon, from me and from everyone at 3 Fox, good afternoon.